Hello, everyone. That was dramatic, a dramatic countdown. Yeah, thanks for everyone for joining us. I'm Will, the Althea super friend and former community manager, and I'm joined today for this community call with CTO and co-founder Justin Kilpatrick and CEO and co-founder Deborah Simpier. Today we're going to talk about all sorts of fun announcements. Anyone, please, if you've got any questions, ask them. There's going to be a giveaway, a promo giveaway of an Althea router at the end, and we'll be giving that router to someone who asked a comment. So fire away. And there's also some promo codes, discount codes if you want some Althea equipment come up later, and of course many exciting announcements and a little background on Althea. And with that out of the way, I'm gonna hand it over to Deborah to fire things off today, and away we go.
Yeah, I am so excited about the call today, and want to express my gratitude to all of the community members that are here and that have followed us along the journey. It's been almost 5 years now since Althea started the journey to where we're now talking about the imminent blockchain launch. So I thought it would be really fitting to kind of go back to Althea's beginning and share, where it started and how it evolved. One of the things that I think is really salient and poignant about how Althea has developed over the last few years is that it's done so in very close relationship and a close, tight feedback loop with actual users. And I think that's really, why you see a very kind of dramatic difference between how Althea has evolved, what the end result and product is, compared to some other, normally you might see in blockchain or Web3 where they'll launch the blockchain first and sort of, figure out where the product market fit is later, kind of start to engage with their audience. And oftentimes that kind of ends up as a, non sequitur or a dead end. And very much Althea is purpose driven to solve some kind of key problems that we saw in the system. Justin has a really great way of explaining the problem as it was in 2018 that we set out to solve. It involves banana subscriptions. So for those folks who haven't been along with us the whole journey and maybe kind of need some context on how things were when we started back in 2018, Justin, if you could share where we started, and then I can share a little bit more about how we got to where we're at now.
Yeah, so I'd always been interested in sort of decentralized technology, open source, and the first thing I was in high school when I first saw blockchain. I was a big Linux enthusiast. I was like, this is so cool! It's going to be the next thing. Somebody's got to do mesh internet. Somebody's going to do that, and they're going to beat me to it. And I'm like, that's sad, but it'll be great. It'll still be so cool. And so I waited a few years, got to college. And around, it was around the sort of the first rise, the first sort of rise of crypto into public consciousness. And I'm like, okay, well, nobody seems to be doing this. I'll make an attempt at it. It was terrible, as you might expect from a college freshman. And so I'm like, okay. I'm still, somebody's still going to beat me to it. That's okay. I'm still excited. And so, I finished up my degree, I got a job out of college. And one day, I was like, okay, I'm pretty good. I'm kind of bored. I want to do something that's valuable. And I went and I stuck my head in this again. And I'm like, wow, nobody's done it still. And so I sat there and I'm like, this seems worthwhile. And I started doing research and I started looking at how to design stuff. And I started posting on that blog again from on that blog that I made on my last attempt when I was in college. And that is how I met up with both of my co-founders, Deborah and Jahan. And Deborah came and said, well, hey, I have a community that needs this. I have a community where the traditional methods of building infrastructure don't work. And and at that time, we had done a lot of research. We had looked at the design and reached a conclusion like, this is a path, we had a path forward. We have something to try. And so I started out. I quit my existing job, and about 4 weeks later, I shipped Deborah the first demo unit. So and by the way, I should have kept one because she kept the darn router 0. She never deployed it.
That's right. Last case is router 0 shipped back in. I think was it December of 2017 or 2018? I don't remember.
I think it was early 2018.
Yeah, maybe. Well, no, because it was right around Christmas time. Because I remember, really feeling like that had made my Christmas. I was so excited, to finally, get my hands on the beginnings of Althea.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of the key point, is that from the very first version, this has been in front of real people. Deborah went around with smiles and baked goods and got people to try out her experimental internet. And that gave us a feedback loop to develop something that was useful for people. Because our ultimate goal is to change the way bandwidth internet service is bought and sold. Because the way bandwidth is sold doesn't make any sense. So a monthly subscription for a line of a certain speed, that makes sense when in the very early days of the internet, when people are literally building a line to your house or building a line normally to a business or a university for internet. So of course it has a certain speed. The line is rated for a certain capacity. But that's not how internet is actually delivered today. What happens is that you have a connection to a street or a neighborhood, and it typically has some capacity X. And then the provider will go and sell some other number. Like let's say the average cable drop to a neighborhood may be 5 gigabit, 2 gigabit, somewhere in that range. Then they will go and sell 500 megabit or 1 gigabit to all couple hundred homes in the neighborhood. And you're like, well, wait, Justin, that's a lot more than what they have coming in. And the answer is yes. Because you're not going to be using that download speed all the time. It gets sold 5, 10, 20 times. And this leads to a really bad internet experience. What it also leads to is waste. If 2 different companies come to your house and build internet connectivity to your house, you just end up paying twice as much because the infrastructure has now been built twice. You have 2 different wires. If the provider you're on goes down, you're still down. You don't get to use the other one. If the connection you have is temporarily bad, you can't go over to the other connection. It's all, the business model really captures users. And this is very different from how the core of the internet works. So in the core of the internet, bandwidth is free to route, go different places, be moved around by different people, and companies can make the deals that benefit them and make the entire internet more optimal. So that's the idea of Althea, is to bring this sort of competition and cooperation that exists at the core of the internet out to the edge. And I think this is the key distinction people often fail to see with Althea versus a lot of other projects, is that a lot of meshy networking projects, their goal is like, okay, we want to eliminate the infrastructure, or we want to fundamentally change the way the infrastructure works. For Althea, we're not changing the way data is transmitted. We're using the same sort of infrastructure, the same sort of equipment with the same sort of capabilities. What we are deploying is a different way to organize all of this with different ownership, things like dynamic failover and routing properties that you typically see at the core of the internet, but pulled out to the edge and put in low-cost home routers, which is really made possible by sort of the exponential rise of processing power in these devices over the past 5 or 10 years, driven by the smartphone revolution. But that's a completely different topic, which I would be all too excited to talk about. But anyways, so yeah, to get to the analogy that Deborah was talking about earlier, right now, buying bandwidth, it's like if you went to the grocery store and you said, okay, I'd like a banana. And they say, well, no, we can't sell you one. You've got to pay $60 a month for an unlimited banana subscription. And you're like, well, I don't know if I need that many bananas. And what if the ones on the next store are good? What if you're out? They're like, no, we can't sell you it any other way. And that's how bandwidth works right now. You're standing at the foot of a cell tower, staring up at it and looking at your 0 bars, and you're like, guess I paid the wrong provider today. That makes no sense. The cost of infrastructure, the cost of internet service is massively increased because we're building extra infrastructure at every level that's not needed. And this extra infrastructure, it's not like it's providing extra redundancy, extra reliability, extra competition. It just sits there. If you're subscribed to provider A, provider B's line to your house is purely a financial loss, which you have to pay for in increased average prices. So that is what Althea is out to change. It's out to change the way bandwidth is bought and sold, to turn it into a commodity, into something you can buy anywhere, like you buy almost everything else in your life that is interchangeable. You know, a gigabyte of data is a gigabyte of data. It's not, there are a few parameters on it which you can adjust and select using the Althea protocol. But for the most part, when you go and you look at all these different cell providers or home internet providers, you're comparing the same numbers. Well, why do you have to work with just one? That is what Althea does. It takes this intelligence and puts it into your router, your home internet router or your phone, to allow you to choose the best, to allow the system to automatically choose the best service on your behalf. Think of it as sort of a personal shopper, but completely automated and for internet service. So if a new, faster connection shows up at the front of your neighborhood, you'll be on it 30 seconds later, and this stream won't even stutter. And in fact, this happens live for our users in Althea networks all the time. They'll be popping from one route to another as, particularly with wireless connections, there's some sort of interference, a tree gets in the way, whatever, one gets overloaded, doesn't matter. They don't even notice as their connection hops around and picks the best price or quality entirely dynamically.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to follow on just kind of the historical context of that. Now that you kind of see the problem space. And one thing that, you're talking a lot about users, individual users, but this really doesn't work for carriers either. Like, for example, 29% of New York City households lack broadband internet. That is roughly 3 million households. So this is a lot of uncaptured market for providers as well. So really what we started to do with Althea over the last few years is system design. What was the goal we're trying to do here? The efficiency, the open markets, that balance of power shifting. And there's a lot of things that had to be built over the last few years in order to, kind of get to this go-to-market stage that we're at now and the imminent Althea blockchain launch. I know everybody's wondering, when launch, right? And then kind of, where we're going to be crafting over the next, 10 years. The things like the routing protocol, the microtransactional platform, plug and play design, network operators. One of the things we learned early on working with people in the field is people just can't put things up in their house and then have a network that's performant. You have to have a local operator coordinating and supporting that. We built the operator tools platform. We built Key LTE, which is an integrated LTE core. So that all of these sort of different, like sometimes we call them broadband Legos, all these different Legos and building blocks work, to build these kind of permissionless peer-to-peer networks. And I think that was another interesting thing that sort of evolved from that. So if we think about the way that people pay transactions now, it's very bespoke and very inefficient. You might send an invoice, you might get a credit card out. Well, it's probably not likely to be the case in the future, right? You sort of make a transaction as you move through space-time or as peers move between each other. And so the foundations that Althea is laying here, when we talk about Althea, the blockchain, the Telecom, which we'll get into a little bit more later, we're really setting that base layer for, permissionless open markets for microtransactions in the future. And that's where it gets really exciting, because then we're really, changing kind of fundamental, inefficient, and legacy systems. But I'm going to pause here now, since we've kind of gone through like where we've been, for Will to share us a few questions from folks in the audience here.
Yeah, we did have one question early on. Someone was asking, this is over on Discord, Joe P. What kind of router is in the router giveaway? And if someone didn't win that and they wanted to maybe go buy one, is there a place they could find that online, maybe an online shop or something?
Yeah, so this is actually a really great point to talk about what is an Althea router. What does it do? Why would you want it? What do you do with it? One of the things that really sometimes is misunderstood is that the Althea routers don't print money, right? They're not an incentivization layer. They are they're a place where microtransactional payments happen in stable coins. So currently they have the XDAI wallet, and then as the Althea blockchain will launch, you'll have an Althea wallet capable, connected to the Gravity Bridge for access to Ethereum-based stable coins. They have a lot of really cool features, like the things that make it part of a larger network. So if you want to extend it, you want to connect LTE to it, you can have a key LTE instance on it. But the thing that if you're just sort of having a standalone router that's pretty interesting is you're actually connected to Althea's system of exits, which acts a bit like a hardware VPN. And Justin, if you want to flesh out the technical, like, cool things about what connecting to an Althea exit looks like.
So this is really about, this was really a technical design decision in order to allow us to move where, in order to allow your home router to sort of select where it's going at any given time and say, okay, this is a better route with a better price. I'm just going to put traffic on this one. We had to make sure that was secure. So traffic terminates at a system of exits that we have based on country, because you need to be able to stream content like Netflix. So it's not designed to evade any. So it's not designed to design. People often think of a VPN as designed to evade something. In this case, it's designed to ensure privacy and to make sure that you can route that your internet traffic can go over a neighbor's connection or anybody else's without you having to worry about your privacy being compromised. And that gives us a lot of freedom to decide where to route traffic. So this is the key aspect of the network.
So with that said, if you want to connect and use the Althea encryption and route through the VPN, so you're not exiting out through Comcast or CenturyLink system, you can go to buy.althea.net and buy one. Or for what we're doing here now is the Linksys 3200, which is fairly capable, has a lot of great Wi-Fi properties. It's sort of that in between. So if you're building a network, we usually recommend that you use the Althea firmware on something like a server, or we have these little NUCs like a Protectly that are kind of a great multi-purpose system. But in order to just kind of get your hands on the technology, get to understand it, you can also go to docs.althea.net and kind of more understand how the pieces fit together too, or how they can fit together. So that is that's the kind of router in a nutshell there, Will.
And we had a couple other questions I think are going to lead into the next general topic. But essentially, what the difference is, for example, between Althea the blockchain and Althea the platform, and why have a standalone blockchain versus using existing blockchains. And again, what the benefits of crypto in the Althea concept. Okay. There's a number of different questions from different people that I think they're all going to run us into the next section. So yeah, that's a good starting point.
Yeah, let's talk about Althea the blockchain, and let's talk about why a global blockchain for telecom is different than the blockchains that exist as they do now. And then I think too, maybe we can talk a little bit about why Cosmos. But Justin, if you want to talk about blockchains for telecom.
Yeah, so the key distinction here is that, so like Deborah was talking about earlier in this call, we started with figuring out what we needed from the ground up to provide users with better internet service and to commoditize bandwidth, which is our original goal. And that's how we built up to this sort of requirement. And so to put this into context, we started on Ethereum because it was available, and then fees got too high inevitably. So we migrated over to XDAI, and that also gave us, stable coins. So we have a requirement that we need stable coins and native stablecoin transfer, and we need fees that are denominated in stablecoins because having to transact and swap and all of that just to manage fees, so much fee management was just a big driver for a lot of these design decisions in the early days. And now the problems we're running up against are all reliability based. So what we have right now are financial blockchains. So this means that by design, the correct transaction to get in the block is the one that is the most profitable with the highest fee. This is a problem for a microtransactions platform, especially a microtransactions platform that you want to build infrastructure on, because it's simply not predictable. Somebody can always come along and pay a higher fee and disrupt things for you. And that's not acceptable when you're trying to sell internet service to a lot of people. You need a system that is fair, first in, first out, rather than just high fee based. And you need a way to ensure that that the blockchain platform will continue to work, continue to stay in consensus, continue to operate in a way that's not going to disrupt the internet service. So essentially, the stability requirements are, an order of magnitude higher, and this is why we have decided that the Althea blockchain is the important next step, because it allows the Althea community to focus on making sure that we have a platform that can satisfy these needs. One that is not going to change the fee structure in a way that's incompatible with microtransactions, which is what happened when we were on Ethereum, or change the have an unacceptable amount of downtime, rapid changes. These sorts of things are not good when you want just a straight, stable platform. And that's the first reason why we need the Althea blockchain. And the second is sort of why Cosmos. And it provides us with a application platform where you have a lot of control over the underlying blockchain and how it's implemented. And you can be highly efficient about processing a lot of transactions and getting instant finality. So instant finality is a really great property to have when you want to send a transaction to somebody and you don't want to sit there wondering if it went through for 12 minutes, 10 minutes, however long that is. So this simplifies all of your other reliability properties, because now you get to dramatically reduce the amount of payment code. You don't need to handle the possibility of like, oh, what if there's a reorg? What if that transaction didn't actually go through? It's all this goes away. And that is really the driving factor behind a lot of our technical and design decisions at Althea. It's not like, what else can we build? It's like, we look at the system and we say, okay, what can we remove? What do we not need to achieve this goal of, commoditizing bandwidth and providing really good, a good experience for the user? Because if it's not there, it can't break. So that is definitely something you spend a lot of time thinking about when you're trying to build a very high reliability system.
So I wanted to add a little bit of flesh to that, but also just emphasize, if it's not there, it can't break, is one of the is a big takeaway that I'm going to take from this conference right here. It's not there, can't break. Simplicity is huge in I think any kind of system design. But I wanted to share a little bit more about the Althea blockchain from the perspective of two different kinds of users, right? So one is the user using the internet in their home or on their phone, or eventually cars and things like that, right? And part of what the reason behind having your own kind of layer one blockchain here, a fundamental system, and the reason why we chose Cosmos is this really amazing interoperability. It's the UX for crypto that we just don't quite have yet. We don't want to have the composability of blockchain and DeFi applications and lending and all these amazing things that we can do with, money and system design just be for an elite class of either very technical people or, folks with that have, that are whales, right? We wanted to be able to have those things be accessible to everyone. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be accessible to everyone on day one. There's certainly, legal and, kind of fiat on-ramping and different UX constraints to that. But what we wanted to do is build that platform that empowered and enabled that. So together with kind of Gravity Bridge and interchain accounts, you can essentially have that one Althea account on your router, your phone, whatever, and interact with DeFi applications and other Cosmos blockchains. Maybe you want to do smart agriculture and then connect that into the regen ecosystem, or something like a Kosh, right, which is compute power. So there's all kinds of different sort of. Oh, did you want to jump in, Justin?
Yeah, so I wanted to come in and mention this, that all of these things, so I mean, why blockchain is essentially the question that we're answering with this. Mm-hmm. And why blockchain is that if you want to create, so this could have been done, let's say Airbnb style or Uber style, where people put in money at one end and the amount of money coming out the other end is completely variable and opaque. And, you raise a bunch of venture capital, you use it to fund a bunch of scooters that you make really cheap to use. Then nobody uses the scooters and everybody throws them in a pit. It's not a way to, that sort of model is not a way to deliver power to the user and to, and this is something that I feel is really important, is that everybody who is selling things to you has robots working for them. They have automation out the wazoo, enabling them to make more money from you. And the only positive future that I see is one where you as a normal person have access to similar automation. Amazon can buy a server and that server just prints the money. It's not like anybody's doing anything. There's not a single human that touches it. It's plugged in. So why can't you do that? And with Althea and with an infrastructure platform that lets you get paid in micropayments, you can. Your home router can host virtual machines on Akash and make money. It can gather samples for an air quality measurement system and be rewarded for submitting them. You can pass bandwidth via Althea for your, to and from your neighbor and make some money there as well. So I see this as part of a sort of a positive future for automation, where it is not just the domain of enormous companies, but is something that you have in your home working for you.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful vision. And I think it interconnects also with the multi-entity nature of an Althea, any kind of Althea instance, right? That you can this can happen in your home. That's also efficient for carriers or a city who maybe has, connected chargers. And instead of getting paid on a monthly basis, they can have microtransactions that are, putting that money to work right away. The second user that I do want to highlight with the Althea blockchain is that it's a building platform as well. There's so much empowerment with the software-defined stack, the automation that Justin was talking about, the microtransactional layer, and the interoperability of Cosmos, that the Althea blockchain is a place for builders to come and interact with these, primitive tools that are there. Those broadband Legos are also blockchain Legos, right? So you can really build interesting applications. Maybe it's something like a decentralized electrical grid. Maybe it's a reward-based tokens for a municipality. Or different kinds of DeFi applications, carbon offsetting, like interacting with regen. There's a lot of things that can happen now that we have this, blockchain, and built for telecom, built for microtransactions, built for infrastructure, and sort of built for that long haul. And this is also why we've taken our time. We did the prerequisite of building, of helping build the Gravity Bridge, which was an important part of this, kind of tech stack. To where we're at now. But Will, do you have some other questions?
I was going to, speaking of infrastructure challenges, we just had the question: are there any solutions to overcome the challenges in rural areas? And then there were a number of other questions also in the same vein. Can I use the Althea share my Starlink with my neighbor, or if I'm in Germany, can I use that to extend my home network with other people?
Yeah, these are great questions.
Although a little bit different.
Yeah, I know a lot about rural. I'm actually in a rural place right now in Oregon. Althea got its start, and it's home for Hawk Networks, which is the C Corp, is here in Oregon, in a little tiny town. And one of the really kind of amazing things about the, this sort of interoperable and composable stack is that it works even in the most challenging areas. And that's serving those 29% of New York City households. For example, we're actually just embarked on some really exciting projects in Atlanta and Dallas to for the kind of underconnected urban population there. And it works very efficiently in rural areas as well. You can utilize existing infrastructure. Your footprint continues to grow with each new user. That's a kind of a key fundamental with an Althea network. There's no dead ends. You don't build a fiber optic cable and then the network just stops. And Comcast is just trying to extract more monthly revenue from you because that's all they could ever get. Instead, you can, build to that farm, that silo, extend to, smart agricultural that then also provides broadband to neighbors. But one of the kind of key distinctions here that we've put in place in a practical standpoint, because of course Althea is agnostic to fiber, fixed wireless, LTE. It's firmware. It's agnostic to different kinds of routers. And you can really build it anywhere. You can build it in Germany, you can build it in the US, rural, urban, doesn't matter. But we have sort of built them as infrastructure, right? So not necessarily as bandwidth sharing, connected to someone's Comcast internet, instead connecting to that middle mile earning, oftentimes part of that Althea protocol. And then building back to the exits, right? So as, actual internet networks that have a decoupled network operator and a, kind of local network provider. So that might be a little bit too abstract for this call here. But, I think there's some great docs. We just actually wrote there's a blog post, blog.althea.net, encourage folks to, take a look at those to get kind of more of a deep dive.
Yeah, well, I think that's.
Someone asked.
We do have a question from Gorilla. Gorilla thing. I was wondering if there's any way to start. Well, there we go. Experimenting with the Althea tech. I don't know if there's any sort of grants or things on the horizon in that area.
Yeah, we actually just finished up the Unlock Connectivity Grant, which were $15,000 for the key LTE and then LTE-based products. We do have so on the Hawk network side, which is the C Corp that does some work supporting networks, and there's other ones as well too that are coming along to offer support for Althea network builds. But on that side, we do have, folks that can help partner. If you're looking at building a network, we can help with your network design and things like that. We also do encourage folks to just grab a router. That's pretty much easiest way to and lightest lift to sort of get your hands on it. There's also mini mesh kits and things like that to kind of start working with that technology, and then you can start working with our team and understand operator tools and things like that.
I'd also just add for anyone listening now, you're all encouraged to join the Althea Discord server. So if you have any questions afterwards, you can always ask them there, and all the links and other things that have been discussed here will be periodically dropping into the general channel there. So you can find a link to that on the Althea website. Sorry, Justin or Deborah.
Oh, I was gonna go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so I just wanted to wrap up one question that we've missed so far, and that was, how does Althea ensure here, let me make sure I get the phrasing right. How do you protect providers from misuse of bandwidth? And this is a question of so there's a couple ways to interpret this sentence. So in terms of if I am an Althea home, if I am selling bandwidth to my neighbor, we have some very advanced dynamic prioritization systems that ensure that that your connection will always be snappy, even if somebody is connecting below you, or So how this works is that it prioritizes the smaller connections. So if somebody tries to spam a really big download, it won't work. You go to load your web page, it'll go first. Your phone call, go first. Your stream will go first. And at the same time, you'll be getting paid to download that big file, anyways. So this is how we help make the network dynamically routable. Because this is why you can't just expand networks. Is that with traditional non-software defined networking, if you were to have a 1 gigabit pipe and then like a backup 100 megabit pipe, and everybody were to go and try and use that, it would all fall over. It would all fall apart. It wouldn't work. But with this dynamic prioritization, the network can reroute through a smaller pipe and keep working. Now, the other interpretation of this is how to protect existing ISPs from using Althea, which would be against the individual's contractual agreements with their existing ISP. So this is what Deborah was talking about when she said that Althea is infrastructure, and that is that all of our networks are backed with rescalable backhaul. So this is called direct internet access, which is the original term. The original way that internet connections were sold. You have a line, it is dedicated, it is your line, and you can do whatever you like with it, including sell it. So that is how Althea is designed to operate. So it's not really designed to be used in the context of like taking somebody's existing home connection and sharing it with the whole neighborhood. That's not infrastructure. It's not that the software doesn't allow you to do that, although you shouldn't, because you would be breaking your contract with your ISP, but it's that we are trying to build real internet service for people, not just take Comcast network and resell it over and over again. That's not building real infrastructure. And more importantly, that's not improving real infrastructure. And I'm going to stop myself here before I take up the rest of the show.
Yeah, I think before I really want to lead into some really exciting stuff that we're working on and what we call liquid infrastructure. And I think that's going to really kind of add some context to the other piece of that. Like, how do you fund, how do you build networks? What does that look like? Who invests in them? Who owns them? Because ownership is a lot of where we get that, true decentralization. But before we do that, I would love to just get to the actual kind of announcement so folks know what to expect, right? We're here now. It's been a few years. We've got all the prerequisite. What's happening now? So what you'll see in the next few weeks is a launch of an Althea testnet. And that's the original blockchain, or the sort of Genesis blockchain, will just be a basic Cosmos SDK chain. And we've got some really great validators that have been expressed interest along the way, who've worked with us in other projects. But once the blockchain is launched, anyone can. It's a permissionless validator set. People can join the validator set if they have Althea token, and it's usually pretty small amount. And then there'll be sort of a road mapping from there that does two things. There's kind of two things happening in parallel. One is migrating this amazing, growing, exceeding the bounds of XTI right now, set over to the Althea blockchain. So making the routers Althea blockchain capable, and then slowly migrating real users over to that. And doing things like maybe integrating with other blockchain projects, different fiat on ramping, all of that, different kinds of things that make it more and more usable. And then at the same time, improving the platform for builders and for the liquid infrastructure that's coming along too, which I'm going to share a little bit more about. So we'll have the Althea testnet coming in the next few weeks, and then after that, we'll be launching mainnet. That's going to be a pretty smooth process. There's not a lot of heavy lift in terms of technology there. Then you'll see incremental changes over the next kind of year, allowing other people to come in, build on top of the Althea blockchain, and then migrating the users that we have. So I wanted to have a pause really quickly and see if there was any questions around that, because that's the meat of the conversation here. We really wanted to share with y'all that big news. Well, we got any like?
Oh well, that was one of the questions earlier about when's the launch, and we have an obligatory winner drop from Adam Baum over here.
Adam, so I'm excited. So this is a really interesting question, Ben. This is kind of why we went back in the history, because back in 2019, for folks that maybe didn't know, Althea did the world's first securities compliance airdrop, meaning folks that we used the Republic platform, and folks that were building on Althea or participating and learning about it. There was a kind of an airdrop through Reg CF. So those folks will be part of the Genesis launch there. And they have, and then the body token holder sort of like decides kind of what happens to the blockchain, because it is decentralized after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main question was when's launch coming. I think we kind of went over that. That said, there is another question that I think might be, if when you're ready to move on to the liquid infrastructure, that I think might be relevant to that one. That's from Beloved Earth LLC. But are there any other questions about that?
Well, if folks want to jump in with their questions now, I also want to encourage people who, if you are interested in being a validator or participating in the Althea blockchain part of the infrastructure, the Discord is going to be your best bet there. Also stay in touch with us on the Twitter. We have regular blogs, so we'll love for y'all to plug in. We'll keep y'all kind of in the loop and updated on that. But if you know how to run a validator for anything on Cosmos, it's going to be a pretty light lift to come over and be part of the Althea blockchain.
Surprisingly, I don't have any other questions on that topic.
Oh, okay.
Validating. I know I thought there was going to be a flood of them.
All right. Well, let's talk about something really exciting in the roadmap, which is liquid infrastructure. And also for folks that kind of want to dig in a little bit more, we just published a blog called Althea Platform. That's actually part of a 3-part series. So next week we'll have one on Althea, the blockchain, and that'll go in a little bit more on how the token is structured and how people participate in that and kind of that roadmap. And then a third one, so the following week will actually be on this, what we're going to talk about, which is called liquid infrastructure, and really kind of get into the deep meat of that. So appreciate everybody being here, but there's more meaty stuff to come as well too. So let's talk liquid infrastructure.
Oh, 1 second. I think we actually did get that question.
Oh, we did.
I'd like to stop and answer it.
Okay.
So this is a great question, and this is also one of the reasons that we like the Cosmos ecosystem, and we're going to be working with Cosmos as a blockchain platform, is because the instant finality and the simple properties of Tendermint as consensus, and I can get off on this, but essentially, in order to counter this, we are going to work on baking validators and the validator software into the Althea nodes themselves, so that the Althea routers can independently interact with the blockchain and even produce blocks. And this is how you help build a distributed physically and and also conceptually network. And this also comes back to how do you have machines in your house making money for you, validators, work on so by being a validator and contributing to the network by helping produce blocks, you would receive whatever the network defines as validator rewards, which of course is something to be decided by the network participants. So yeah, that's one of our major goals there. And we also intend to dial down the block speed and dial up the number of active validators in the set. There are a lot of blockchains that want to try and keep very fast blocks, every 1 or 2 seconds. And this is because they're chasing high frequency trading. And that's important if you're a financial blockchain. We're not a financial blockchain. If it takes 30 seconds for a transaction to go through, that's really not bad at all. Whereas, a like 30-second block time will allow us to bring in a validator set rounding up on 1,000 people active. So that will be really great, perhaps even more as we continue to optimize it. But, I like to be conservative. Most people like to overstate numbers. I prefer to understate. But this is our goal there, is that we can, is that with a telecom blockchain, we get to sort of dial these knobs and say, like, this is what works for our application. Because bandwidth payments settling slightly slower is not a big deal. Where we're not trying to pursue every avenue at once and do, like all the swapping and all of this and all of that. We just need to optimize for bandwidth applications and also liquid infrastructure, which Deborah is about to talk about.
I feel like that was huge, though. And I think that's a really important point as we see proof of stake systems kind of tend to start to centralize, or centralize around technical folks. I mean, you'll see this kind of deliberate design decisions with Althea along the way. It's like, how do we, and now allow more people to participate in infrastructure, but while not sacrificing the key things that we need from infrastructure, right? Like, I talk about this on Gravity sometimes too, but it's like with plumbing, with the internet, you don't necessarily need they're not exciting. They're not meant to be exciting. They're meant to work and then work reliably. That's what we need there. They need to be performant. It's not enough to build a network that no one uses. There's no point of that. Or to build plumbing, that's made with maybe something flimsy. You need to have something that's going to be performant and work for real people, and that's the kind of key design decisions. But I think it's exciting when we think about, because when you have a validator in your home, when you're participating in the system, it's that much easier to vote, right? It's that much easier, and it's those UX decisions. It's that portal to all of that that's built with the user in mind, not with the Web3 native person in mind, right? So, because we already have, Althea throughout the US and 8 states, Africa, using these systems, using blockchain without having to have the lift of understanding. It's that kind of iPhone moment, right? And I've gone on a tangent, but I want to talk about liquid infrastructure. Because this is really, really exciting. And this is really, when we talk about the blockchain, this is the next milestone needed to, so Althea, the blockchain is the next big milestone. And then what we'll be building on top of that is something we call liquid infrastructure. So we've talked a lot about all the microtransactional payments and how, the revenue is programmatic. It's, transparent on the blockchain. It's, sort of put up different pieces of infrastructure and in that kind of peer-to-peer way. But what's really neat is we have this transparency that's attached actually to a physical, asset, whether that's a mile of fiber optic cable, 100 miles of fiber optic cable, or a radio tower that's providing that. There's Althea instance that's sort of recording that revenue transparently, programmatically, securely on the blockchain. And what liquid infrastructure does is actually mint, most likely an NFT, maybe a fungible token later, that represents that revenue. And that really allows different sort of investment decoupled from the service layer to occur. And so that's really when we talk about composability and we talk about the Legos of what we're building, this is the next iteration of that really allows for interesting community governance and ownership models, that allows for investment funnels while still having local governance. And this also, somebody had mentioned RF spectrum. Here's something that it very well relates to. Think about radio frequency, governments sell it at auction, companies buy it. It's very underutilized in many cases. It's just sort of sitting on the asset list. They don't want to move it from assets, but maybe they would want to lease it, or maybe they want to sell it and have a royalty. And that revenue, that blockchain stablecoin revenue that's kind of happening on a minute by minute basis, is going to just follow that asset along. So I want to pause for just a minute, Justin, if you want to flesh that out from a technical perspective, and we'll get some questions on it too.
Yeah, so from a technical perspective, I don't have any comments right now, but this is most important from a sort of financial perspective. Right now, if you have a mile of fiber, it's worthless. You can't sell anybody internet with it because you don't own all the connectivity back. You don't own all the connectivity back to the internet exchange. And this is how big ISPs prevent people from competing with them, is that they own all of the infrastructure between the internet exchange and the house. And, they spend a bunch of money building duplicate versions of this infrastructure because they're obsessed with owning all of it. And Althea provides an alternative to that. So now if you own a mile of fiber, it is something that can be used to make revenue easily. And that dramatically changes infrastructure investment in internet. Because this scheme, the way bandwidth is currently bought and sold, prevents investment. It prevents prices from going down, and it prevents users from getting better connectivity to their home, because it makes it very hard to justify that investment. You can't build a little bit of anything. You have to build the entire network end to end, or you make $0. And that is why it is so hard to compete in the internet service industry, and why everybody is unhappy with the amount they pay, the quality of the service they get, everything about that. So with Althea and with liquid infrastructure, we're hoping to drive more investment, more building, smaller providers, by making it easier for them to step in and provide service to people, and to make the connectivity environment as competitive as it should be for the essential commodity of the 21st century is, a gigabyte of data. And right now, imagine if you had to have a subscription to a gas station and you couldn't use any other gas station. That is the world we're living in now. And we want to take it to a very different one, where anybody can build a piece of internet infrastructure the same way they might start a restaurant. It's not an enormous, impossible bar to clear.
Yeah, I think there's so much inefficiency in the existing systems and friction. I think about, secondary markets for RF spectrum, they don't really exist. And it's, very hard even for people that have means to be able to invest in telecom infrastructure, which, fiber optic cable is a 30-40 year asset at least. So it's something, think about real estate now, folks with, kind of moderate means can actually get involved with real estate. They can own an Airbnb house. They can, put that to work for them and have new opportunities. But that really just doesn't exist in telecom. It's sort of all siloed off, or in infrastructure in general. And, I think this is one of those really flexible and empowering pieces, or you can take existing infrastructure that you own, and, lend or borrow against it. All kinds of different things can happen when we make liquid markets for this. And then there's another little piece that's really interesting too, because you're also eliminating a lot of the demand risk that, like, places like emerging markets that don't have a very good legal system prevent people from investing, and both time and resources into there, because they're not sure they're going to get paid. If you're going to send it, an invoice and it's like net 30 or net 60, and the legal system is not going to make sure you're going to get paid, then, it really prevents anyone from actually taking that risk, except in very rare circumstances. But when you have that revenue, you can see that revenue programmatically on the blockchain. It's linked to that infrastructure. Then it reduces the demand risk. So then I think we'll see a huge opening up of new opportunities, even in the most challenging places, emerging markets, places where the legal system isn't great, rural places, urban places that haven't been well utilized. That 29% in New York City. Anyway, go ahead, Will.
No, I just want to say that we're in the home stretch. This last 4 minutes before we hit the hour. So if anyone has any last minute questions, now's the time to ask them. We did actually just get one. I'm going to pop up here. And in the meantime, I think we'll be announcing the winner of who's going to receive the router on Twitter a little bit later, once the comments have been tallied up. And then, of course, as always, after the chat, feel free to join the conversation on the Althea Discord server. But we did just have a final question just on that topic you were just talking about, is that how can homeowners invest in these things going forward, or what would that look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think I think the original sort of MVP of this is going to be non-fungible tokens, but they're, NFTs are accessible. I think there's there's of like kind of legal and KYC that might be involved with that. I mean, certainly it's going to depend on the jurisdiction and so forth like that as we go along. But the idea is to start to make these things more accessible for everyday folks. Along as then we'll do it, of course, cautiously in ways that, are respective of each jurisdiction's legal requirements. Oh, one thing on that that's interesting too is that because of the Althea platform using stable tokens, the neat thing about this is that you're actually accruing that revenue in stables. You can buy things in stables, which is very easy. It's a lot easier than sort of accruing the risk of having an NFT in a purely speculative environment. Which so I think that the kind of like the full fiat on ramping in UX is going to be very kind of an iPhone moment, right? Really easy for folks to be able to do, regardless of background and technical merit.
Yeah, we did have another question from Nick Hill. This is kind of a two-parter here. What's the Althea's current, what different markets it in, how many customers it's serving, that sort of thing. But also, how do markets in other countries use US exit nodes, or do they, I would add?
So there's actually, you can set up an exit node. So Althea firmware is open source. You can go to the GitHub, you can flash your own exits. Happy to reach out to us and we can partner and work with you on that as well. And the firmware for the routers is also online for folks that want to do that themselves, or if they want a little bit more technical support, we can help with that too. Number of users is growing. Like I said, we have networks in 8 states, and we're doing some urban networks as well. So we'll have actually some visibility into that here pretty soon. And then someone asked, so you're using NFTs as a type of membership. I don't think that's quite that. I'm sorry, that wasn't quite the description that I think we want to portray. The NFTs represent the physical token, or the physical asset, excuse me. So they represent a tower, they represent a mile of fiber, they represent band 41 or whatever, and RF spectrum.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the hour, everyone. Justin, Deborah, if there are any final comments, otherwise, I think that's about it. And like I said before, the winner of the contest will be posting on Twitter. And if you'd like to join the conversation later, jump on into the Althea Discord server. That's where you can ask questions anytime, and you'll find a link on althea.net.
Just want to thank everybody for being here and for being part of the conversation, and welcome everyone to our Discord. We have a great community of folks there, or follow us on Twitter and the blog.
Great. Bye-bye, everyone.